be the judge of that what best serves women is, I mean,
because right now we can look at the current society which we live in, and we can understand how we got here. And we can understand, we'll start with the birth rate, which we talk about quite a bit, okay? Being in the toilet, that's due to anti-natalist feminist policy. And also...
But how can you say that the birth rate declining is not due to pollutants in the water? It's not due to the way we eat, which is
It's due to birth control.
But I mean, how can you say that? Because
we have all the data that shows that it's due to birth control.
What data shows that eliminates all confounding factors of pollution, of...
Because if you take a scale, there's actually a scale, and you can look it up now on your phone if you want to. But you can actually watch when birth control is introduced in the 70s, and you can see the birth rates go right, and
but
marriage
that says
rates
nothing about causation.
On a massive decline, and the same thing with abortion. So the thing is,
that says nothing about causation.
Okay,
you can put any two things
all causation is a correlate, by the way.
Yeah.
So if we have strong enough correlates, like for instance, I don't know, birth control being a thing which prevents birth, that seems like a really strong In fact, could you think of a single stronger correlate than birth control for why we might have a birth decline? One.
Yeah, I do think that pollution,
pollution,
plastics, yes.
Come on, pollution,
plastic pollution, yes.
Plastic pollution.
I do think that male fertility is on the decline because of chemicals, certain chemicals.
That plastic pollution?
I mean, can you disprove
is
that?
More? Hang on, I just want to make sure I get this right first. You think that plastics in the water and the plastics inside of your system have more to do with the falling birth rate than women on birth control?
Yeah, because I think most women get off of birth control eventually and start having kids.
When?
I don't think, honestly, I don't think that it's that much later than it used to be.
It used to be when? Birth control's a new advent. That's something modern.
Oh, you mean, so okay. The 1970s, I guess.
They were still having babies in their 20s. The pill was not as widespread as it is now. But I mean, yeah, obviously, birth control would be a much stronger correlate than plastics. I mean, I disagree. Plastics and male fertility. You're saying that it drops male fertility to the point where they can't get women impregnated anymore? I mean, if all you have to say is there's a strong correlation, I bet you could put up a graph that shows the concentration of plastic in the water, or concentration of whatever forever chemicals in the water or in food or whatever, and you could do the same birth rate graph.
Chris donated $200. She said pollution because she wants to win an argument. She's not interested in getting to the actual truth. Thank you again for making feminists look crazy. These clips are going to be great.
I do think that's the actual truth. I genuinely believe that there are more factors to the declining birth rates than birth control. Because I think, and I don't think you can really prove that it is birth control, because like I was going to say, you could put up the same graph of the concentration of whatever in the water and the birth rate, and I'm sure it would look just as close. So, I mean, really what I'm curious is how you prove that these are connected.
Let's test the logic and see if that's the case. If all women went off of birth control tomorrow and had the same amount of sex they're having right now, what do you think would happen to pregnancies?
They would go up.
How much?
Probably by quite a bit.
Like, how much do you think quite a bit is?
I have no idea, honestly. Probably a lot.
Now, let us assume for a second that we consumed the exact same amount of plastic that we are right this second, and they all went off of it tomorrow. You're still going to see a huge, massive increase, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now if we were to retract this and say, okay...
But also, pregnancies don't equal birth rate. Because who's to say that all those women wouldn't go out and abort the children?
Okay, but assuming... Let's assume there was no abortion. Okay. If there was no birth control... And by the way, abortion is birth control. That is a form of birth control. It's literally lumped in with it. But we were talking specifically about the pill.
Yeah.
So if it is true that if tomorrow all of them went off of birth control, had the same amount of sex, they would all start getting pregnant, because they would, then your argument that plastics are degrading men's fertility must not be a very good argument.
I mean, I guess you could make the same argument if you took all the plastics out of the water, but all the women were still on birth control, I believe...
What would happen?
I believe
they would all magically get pregnant now?
No, but I do believe that the birth rate probably would increase.
Yeah, but not like it would if you took them off the pill. So if you were to get all the plastics out of men's systems, right, and women were still on birth control, still no more babies, right?
Well, no, that's fair. I'm just saying I don't...
But the opposite... Lots more babies, right?
So, yeah, okay, I will agree with you that
So which is the stronger correlate, do you think?
I will agree with you that it is stronger, but I don't think that you can say that it's the sole cause, or that there is an orchestrated campaign. Because, okay, I'm curious who is behind this anti-natalist campaign, and what is the goal to get the birth rate to decline? In the
70s, there was, well, I mean, this goes back, but we'll start with what's called the population bomb. Have you ever heard of that book?
No.
Okay, well, the population bomb was a book which was written by anti-natalists who were citing the warning bells, saying that the world was going to become overpopulated and our resources were going to be stretched thin and there was going to be mass starvation across the planet. They started dropping this book, The Population Bomb, all over the world, in third world nations, and I mean, it was widely spread in first world nations, and it was adhered to as a looming problem. It was all over the media, and it stayed all over the media. But there was a big problem. And the thing is that while these anti-natalists were pushing for this, none of the things which they claimed were going to happen due to the high population actually happened. The opposite happened. It turns out the more people you have, the more hands you have, and the more you can do what are basically logistics, right? So you need truckers, and you need boat captains, and you need farmers, and you need and what's happened, the more people we get, the easier it is to get supplies to people who really need them. And that has been the consequence of a larger population, that you can get your cell phone made in China from parts which come in from all over the world, centralized there. They make them all in a batch. They send them to North America, and all of this happens within a couple of days. That's a massive undertaking that requires serious human power to do. The anti-natalist movement would have curtailed all of that. And yes, it has been something which has been pushed. The book, The Population Bomb, which you can look up, and you can look up the entire sequence of events behind it where they were dropping it all over the world. Yes, there was an anti-natalism push, and there still is an anti-natalism push. One form of anti-natalism is trying to convince younger women to destroy their fertile years by going to school and going to college and getting tons and tons of student debt, which they have the majority of student debt over men. It's not even close. And instead of having a family when they're young. That's anti-natalism to me.
I guess, do you think it's like orchestrated with the intent of...
I mean, there's no doubt that the government's handing out student loans, and that the government not only hands out student loans, but really pushes the idea that women should be in school and going for higher education rather than being stay-at-home moms. I see the vilification of the family all throughout media. Not only do I see the vilification of family, but they make men look like bumbling idiots inside of sitcoms and women the heroes constantly. I rarely ever see a nuclear family show anymore where there's a strong patriarchal lead and a typified American housewife.
I mean, I feel like that was always kind of rare. I mean, like I Love Lucy, the classic American sitcom,
was subversive, but All in the Family was much closer to what an American family looked like than I Love Lucy with Ricky Ricardo and Lucille Ball. Now,
yeah, I mean, that's what I mean.
All in the Family with Archie Bunker was much more akin to probably what your grandma and grandpa's relationship was actually like. So, yeah, no, I think that there were shows like, and by the way, everybody tuned in for that show for that reason, because it was so much closer to the reality of the American family than Lucy Goes to the Chocolate Factory for the 8th time this week.
I know, I'm just saying I don't think these things are new, and I don't think that they're, in my opinion, I don't think that they're an orchestrated, like, anti-natalist push. I mean, who's to say that some women's realities are not that their husbands are bumbling idiots? I mean,
there are so many, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of documents which have been published, everything from CIA projects which produced anti-natalist results and a push for anti-natalist results. You might think that that's conspiratorial, even though they're all declassified and you can read them. But Yeah, there's been a massive antinatalist movement inside of the United States.
What does the government...
Pointing right at the feminists who started feminism, who said they wanted to destroy the nuclear family. Having children was slavery. They said it. All of them said it.
Well, that would be feminist. I'm saying, what does the government stand to gain from... Because honestly, I understand what women in the 50s, 60s, and 70s stood to gain from, you know, escaping, I guess, the nuclear family. But what does the government stand to gain from demographic pressures? And it seems like that would only...
There's only so much of this I can get into because of the platform that we're on. Okay, so I am gonna have to move off in a second, just because we have to.
Yeah.
But I don't want to leave this hanging. I want to answer it. The federal government itself is at the mercy of lobbying groups. Congressmen and even presidents are essentially bought and paid for, not just here, but in Canada as well. And in South America, where you have lobbying that goes on a different way from drug cartels. But lobbyists themselves hold the keys to the power in the United States government, not the government.
Yeah, I fully agree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, these lobbying groups, though, especially these feminist think tanks, which go to Congress with these various bills, one of the things that they push are abortion bills and the women's rights to have abortion, right? Right? Yeah. How is that not anti-natalist policy that's orchestrated, centralized, then handed to the government?
Because that's a human rights
and
issue.
Hand out to the... But it's anti-natal... Well, your question, your question was, right, is this a conspiracy? Because that's what you're alluding to. This sounds conspiratorial, but it's not, and I just walked you through how it's not. Okay. If you agree that there are liberal think tanks, and these liberal think tanks are coming up with new and better ways to streamline the abortion process, abortion most certainly an anti-natalist policy. There's no way you could ever make the claim that it's not. It most certainly is. And then they streamline that policy to politicians who then try to codify it into law. How in the world could this be conspiratorial? It's business as usual.
Okay, well, if